This week on the Deep Leadership Podcast.
This has been my mission, is to take this observational listening and get people to have better conversations. Because if you ask me, that's the basis for not only for leadership, but also for happiness at work, is having better conversations.
This episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Deep Leadership Podcast. Salty Sailor is a veteran-owned coffee brand on a mission to deliver premium, fresh roasted coffee while making a positive impact in the world. Their motto is drink coffee and do good, which reflects their commitment to making amazing coffee and actively supporting the military community. 10% of every order goes to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, an organization dedicated to helping sailors, Marines, and their families in times of need. All our listeners get 10% off every order of their amazing coffee by using the discount code DEEP at checkout. So check them out at saltysailorcoffee.com. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Markus van Alphen. Markus is a renowned leadership psychologist and author of more than 15 books in Dutch and in English. His most recent books include The Excellent Leader and The More Excellent Leader. His company, The Excellent Organization, helps leaders and individuals worldwide increase workplace and personal relationship effectiveness to transform their environments and succeed. As a restorative practitioner, he also is called in to resolve incidents and initiate the process of conflict resolution, as well as train others to implement the restorative approach. Markus developed the observational listening concept in 2014, and I'm excited to have him on the show to learn from his expertise. So Markus, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, John. I'm really honored to be here.
Oh, it's an honor, sir, to have you on the show and learn from your expertise and all the work that you've been doing over the years. But I wanted to start off, I was looking at some of your material, and one of the things you say is that productivity depends less on targets and result-oriented work and more on how happy someone is at work. And that's a little surprising to me. So can you walk us through that?
Oh, yes, I can. There's so much recent research. I even read a study of this year. That's the pre-report, so it's only just come out, that actually says that people who have a sense of purpose in their work, for example, that those people, that it changes their personality for the better. That in a period of 13 years, they saw improvements in the big 5 personality traits of these people, and those were positive improvements. So just simply having purpose. And to me, that is part of job happiness. If you are doing if you're doing a job just for the salary, that's a completely different motivation than if you're doing this because it fits with who you are. If you're an authentic person and you can be authentic and you feel that you're contributing to whatever it is that you're contributing to, the sense of purpose, this fits, as far as I'm concerned, perfectly with this concept of happiness. And what we also know is, again, a ton of research that just shows people who are happy, they perform better. They also, there's less sick leave. It's actually a no-brainer if you think about it. If you're happy, you like going to your work. You like turning up. You like doing your best. There's less people who decide to leave the company. So you maintain your talent. So you spend a lot of work as an organization to attract this good talent. And this to me is actually a very simple way to retain your good talent, is make sure that your people are happy in what they are doing. So that's might be a couple of different aspects thrown in at once. But that to me is the essence.
Which is very interesting because we don't talk about that. You know, when we get trained up leaders, we teach them, all about goals, and we've got to hold people accountable at targets and what have you. But nobody talks about being, maintaining their or working to make sure your employees have purpose and they're happy and they like what they do. But you're saying that has a bigger effect, which is unusual. We should be spending more time on this side, I would imagine.
Well, I actually think it's not that not as I said, it's not rocket science if you think about it. I mean, KPIs and all that kind of stuff, beautiful stuff. But is that what makes somebody happy?
Yeah.
Or is this the idea of, hey, I'm doing something that's meaningful and I'm doing something that fits with who I am as a person?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And again, it's common sense, but it's not commonly practiced. So it's good that we get that out there first of all, so everyone can understand that yes, happiness, sense of purpose, these things are related to productivity and work performance. So I love that. One of the things in the introduction, I mentioned observational listening that you developed back in 2014. Talk to us about what that is and why that's so important in leadership.
Well, it's actually a deepening of what we should be taught in leadership trainings, and that's active listening. Is how to be present in a conversation, how to make sure that the other person also feels heard, and that the other person sort of can share their story and that you're listening. I was always puzzled why certain people could do this better than others. You notice people sometimes go into a conversation. For the one person, it just goes, and for the next person they battle. And my sort of observation in the long run was the difference is how they are present in a conversation. And the people where it just goes sort of so naturally and simply are the people who are observing what are the emotions that are going on in that other person right here and now. So not what they're telling us about their emotions. No, what you're sensing in that other person is happening right now. And those people, they just naturally focus their conversation, and they steer their conversation according to what's happening in the conversation. And that part of observing, and I believe it's not only eyesight, it's also your hearing. It's actually trying to put all of your senses in as much as is possible to understand what's happening in that other person. These are the people where the conversation just flows. And that observational listening, I was really interested, is this something you're born with, or is it a skill you can learn?
Yeah.
And the latter, and the latter seems to be true. So this has been my mission, is to take this observational listening and get people to have better conversations. Because if you ask me, that's the basis for not only for leadership, but also for happiness at work, is having better conversations.
I love that you started with being present. Is something that I talk about a lot. Is one of the most important things we do as a leader is be present. But one of the things what I like what you said is that this is something that can be learned. And so one of the areas you might someone might say is like, I'm sorry, I lack empathy. I'm an accountant. I'm an engineer. I'm a whatever. I lack empathy, right? But you're saying you don't necessarily have to have empathy. You have to be present, and you have to be observing what's happening with all of your senses. And that's not being empathetic. That's actually being an active an active player in the conversation.
In a way, it's both, because I'm saying that empathy is this. Empathy is listening, to being present, and just trying to observe and trying to use all your senses to get the best approximation possible of what's going on in the other. And just for listeners who might be thinking, well, I'm an engineer. Well, guilty. I was an engineer too. I started my career as an electrical and electronic engineer. So I don't think it's got to do with the profession you choose. I think it's got to do with just being aware, hey, hang on, I can tell electrons to go left or right, but people, different kettle of fish.
Yeah, I knew your background was in engineering. That's why I touched on that. And I'm also an engineer. So, and we're talking about leadership. So we're talking about things that are not, we didn't learn in engineering school at all, for sure. Yeah.
No, definitely not. No.
Yeah. So your books, an excellent leader and a more excellent leader. So I have to ask the question, what are some of the, is it characteristics or personality traits or things that they do? What makes an excellent leader?
Well, this is exactly it. This whole idea of that you need to be born a leader, in other words, have certain personality traits and things like that. I don't believe that's entirely true. Yes, of course, it's easier if you for example, are a slightly more open person and you're slightly more friendly and things like that. But that doesn't mean that you cannot learn things. And my point of departure in all of these books as well is start observing what you can already do. Start observing what works and what doesn't work. And it's a very simple but not easy thing to do. Is that what works? Do more of it.
Yes.
And that what doesn't work, do less of it. So to me, that's already a very basic thing. I believe everybody already has a certain amount of empathy in them, so they can do this already. It's just they're not aware of it. So my whole idea behind this observational listening is, how do we make people more aware of the capacities they have and just put these capacities in, just more consciously, more goal-oriented, more consistently. And that's the way we can find an easier way to converse with people. That to me is the ideal.
Yeah, it's interesting because we as humans, we have all sorts of relationships outside of work, right? Where we're probably, if you're married, you've had to, probably had to date, you probably had to be empathetic at some point in your life, right?
Sure.
And is it that we leave our if we leave that at the doorstep to work and we think that we don't have to bring that to work? But I mean, I think people have the capacity for it
Exactly.
outside of work. You're saying we need to bring that into work.
Exactly. And this touches on this myth that we're all brought up with, at work, no emotions, please. Yeah, we're completely rational and things like that. And, I think cuckoo. I mean, how are you going to turn up at work without emotions? And to me, that's just it's just not possible.
Yeah, I think, have you seen, I've been in the workforce for a long time, 30 plus years. And I think maybe when I first started my career, you probably could be emotionless at work and just play by the books. So I think today you can't. I think the situation has changed, and I think employees want to see real people. They want to work for people that are authentic and that have real emotions and they have real relationships, versus this sort of pulling the party line and saying, well, that's the way we do it here, and you need to follow the rules. Do you see that? Like, is it changing over time? Yeah.
Yes, I think so. And I think part of the answer to that is innovation. If you're just doing very routine work where you don't have to think very hard, you don't have to be innovative, you don't have to collaborate. I mean, if I'm just turning in the same screw every day in some other assembly line, where's emotions come into play? And I think that a lot of the work that was very mundane has been automated. So the work that is left is collaborative. So we have to collaborate with one another. This immediately brings this whole subject of emotion. How do you collaborate with somebody without any emotion whatsoever? I mean, I find the idea of no emotions completely ridiculous, because you wouldn't come out of your bed in the morning. You wouldn't turn up for work.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's who we are. It's our, it's who we are as our authentic self. And I think I think our employees they don't want a fake boss. They don't want someone that's just sort of, no emotions, bad news, good news, and no emotion. I think that's not exactly what they want. They want someone who's genuine, someone that's approachable, they can understand and relate to. Yeah. So that's interesting. And I think it goes to, again, it goes back to being able, if you are that way, more authentic, then you're going to have those more authentic conversations as well, versus, not just closing off and keeping everything,
Well, this also fits very nicely with, I'm sure you've heard of Dacey and Ryan's self-determination theory. They come with the three needs that everybody has at work in order to feel happy. And to me, one of the most important is the sense of connection. So exactly what you say, having an authentic connection with an authentic other person already adds to your feeling of happiness.
Yeah,
just as through those other two, you know, then the other two, again, sense of purpose is part of what we call mastery or competence. So that sense of purpose is also what makes us happy.
yeah.
And the third one also again fits in with all of these is autonomy, that we have some way of being allowed to be who we are and also using our expertise in the way that we see fit. So we have this capacity for adjusting our own work environment to fit not only the person we are, but also the work that we're doing, and be able to put all our own expertise in the equation as well, which to me is the whole reason you're hiring somebody in the first place. You're not hiring them to do a job. You're hiring them because they have expertise that you want, probably expertise you don't have yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you say that because one of the things, one of my observations, at least with bigger companies, is that we recruit and we bring in top talent, usually, you know, some young people, college graduates that they're excited to come to work for our company and they have expertise,
Yes.
but we tend to give them grunt work, you know, especially in the early days because they're young and, you know, we just, well, you got to earn your due. And
Sure.
so they get discouraged after about a year and they're no longer engaged and they're, you know, now we've lost another good engaged employee because we just haven't leaned on their expertise or gave them an
Yeah.
opportunity to use their expertise.
And I know that there's a lot of people think this is a generational thing.
Hmm.
And I recently read a study that said, well, all this idea about it being generational is actually BS.
Hmm.
This works whether it's Gen X, Gen Z, whoever, or whether it's just other people. If people are bored at work, if people aren't challenged at work to the sufficient degree, the chances are they're going to leave.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I left 8 years ago. I started my own company because I left corporate, and it was mostly because I lost the ability to use autonomy. So the
Hmm.
companies kept getting bigger and bigger, and they'd be more bureaucratic and more layers, and so, you know, in the early stages of these companies, they wanted guys on the, you know, like general managers
Sure.
like myself. They wanted people that could think, you know, think on their feet. They
And
could
think
make
for
decisions. They could
themselves.
move
Yeah.
quickly. And so we were praised for that. And then as the companies got bigger and bigger and bigger, they wanted to control everything. And so we became villains, those that were thinking outside the box and using autonomy and their own vision to get things done. So I went from being a hero to a zero as the company got more bureaucratic. So for me, it was like there were less and less things I had authority to make
Okay,
decisions
yeah.
on as a
Yeah.
vice president general manager. So I just said, you know what, I'm done with
I'm
this.
out of here. Yeah.
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 And what you're saying, I know there's also micromanagement
Mm.
is a killer, is an absolute killer for people's motivation, and this goes against all three these needs that I just mentioned. It goes against the need for autonomy. It goes against the need for purpose, mastery, and for connection. People who feel micromanaged, they just feel, you know, what am I doing here? I'm a robot.
Yeah, you know, I've been in a situation where I was micromanaged once, and I think the feeling I
Mm.
got was, this boss doesn't trust me, you know,
Yeah.
because he's
Yeah.
telling me everything to do every minute of the day, and I'm like,
Checking me every minute of the day too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so it was almost like I don't trust you, you know,
Yeah.
and so I have to, you know, detail everything you do because I don't trust you. And that's we don't stay in relationships where people don't trust us, right? We look for
Nope.
another
Yeah.
relationship. So
And
yeah,
that's true at home and at work.
exactly, exactly. And the other side of the coin, I talk about absent leadership. And so these are leaders that are
Yes.
just not present,
Not
right?
there.
So
Yes.
and you know, they're never around, they're always in meetings and they're always busy. And the feeling there is that this boss doesn't care. You know,
No,
they're not present, they don't care what's happening.
sure.
So either one of those spectrums, too involved or
Cool.
not involved enough, can be
Sure.
disastrous for leadership.
Yeah, I'm feel what you're saying. I think that there also is the whole idea is it's got to be genuine if you ask me. It's got to be
Mm.
authentic. So if you're interested in another person, if it's a trick, I don't know. I think people aren't that stupid. If it's just a trick, people are going to they're going to latch on to you. And then you have exactly the opposite effect. So I really believe, and this is also what I preach with this whole observational listening thing. If you're going to do this like a trick, please don't do this. You know, this only works, and it works really well when you're authentic.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking to myself, some people might say, this is my authentic self. I'm a jerk, and so if somebody is we want people to be authentic, but unless they're a terrible person, right? I guess it's like I was just thinking to myself that we tell people to be authentic, but you also have to be authentic in the right ways, right? I mean, in terms of having that positive relationships and actually looking out for the best interests of your employees and what have you, right?
Well, I think, look, it's okay to be a jerk. I
Mm.
mean, who am I to say you're not allowed to be a jerk? The question is, what are you in a certain job for? So here we come to actually the description, or the function description of what is a leader's role. And I don't believe being a jerk fits in with the role description of a leader.
Mm.
And I don't believe motivating other people is part of your job description either. This is, some people disagree with me on this one, and they're welcome to. But I believe, and this is what I believe observational listening adds to the equation, is if you're in tune with other people and their needs and their emotions, you don't have to motivate them. It's because they're there already. In other words, they are already motivated. So the only thing you have to do, or you don't have to even do it, it goes automatically, is if you're in touch with people, you know what they need. And you can just align with what their needs are. And they're motivated. They come to work, they're happy, they're doing things for a complete different reason and for the salary they get at the end of the month. And yes, of course, you need the salary. I mean, that's a no-brainer as well. So the saying that salary isn't important, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
But salary works in a different way than what, shall we say, the management science of 20, 30 years ago taught us. Carrots and sticks don't work. Daniel Pink is a very well-known author on this one. He says carrots and sticks don't work the way we think they do.
Yeah. I love that you're saying it. This is sort of 3D level chess. This is sort of the next level. So we say, well, sure, it's about motivating other people, right? But really, it's about how do you create intrinsic motivation in the individual, right? And that's when things become magical. And it's all about aligning their wishes, dreams, desires, career goals with what the company needs. If you can align the things that they've been put on earth to do, they feel like they've been put on earth to do, and you do it in pursuit of company objectives, then you just get out of the way as a leader, right? Because people are internally motivated to get things done.
Sure. And that's also why I'm a big fan of, Simon Sinek calls it the why of the organization. Mm-hmm. I believe if that's public knowledge, why are you, what is your reason for existence as an organization? If that's clear, then people will want to work for you if that fits with their own why, with their own reason for existence. And that's making for so much better chances that people fit, and that people will want to stay, and that people are motivated indeed intrinsically. So I don't believe you have to create that intrinsic motivation. I think it's there. It's there already. You just have to align with it.
Yeah. And I think that those are going to be the employees that are going to go above and beyond. If they feel like they've been put on earth to do this thing, and it's in pursuit of the mission, which has been clearly stated, and that like they believe in that mission, then you don't have to do much as a leader.
Then you just they're also going to go that extra mile.
Yeah. Interesting. One of the things I was also looking at your materials, and you say it's important for employees to feel as if they are heard, seen, acknowledged and psychologically safe, or feel like an environment where they're psychologically safe.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think the first three I've basically touched on already with this whole idea of observational listening. Psychological safety is sort of an overarching thing, which also fits with those others. And that's really this idea of, am I allowed to be here? Am I allowed to speak up? Am I allowed to make critical comments? Am I allowed to share my expertise without having the fear of having my head chopped off? So, basically feeling safe to me is a prerequisite before people are going to make any critical comments. I can share a story, for example. This was in a company, quite a large organization, and one of the directors, she decided, all this hiring people, I don't want to go through the procedures. I'm just going to hire a whole lot of people I've worked with in the past within this organization and previous organizations, and I'll make my management team that way. No, I don't know what you think. What are the kind of people, who are the kind of people that she's going to approach to join her management team? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, the people that think the same way she thinks, and that
Exactly.
that maybe they have
Exactly.
friends or close relationships. Yeah, yeah,
So it was a lovely atmosphere in that management team, but
yeah,
it was disastrous because nobody opened their mouths.
yeah,
Nobody would even dare of saying, oh, wait a minute, shouldn't we be thinking about A, B, or C?
yeah, yeah.
So, and this to me is okay. It's a little bit different to psychological safety. I believe that diverse teams are beautiful. They're brilliant, and they only work if people feel psychologically safe.
Mm.
If people don't feel the safety to be able to be authentic within that team, what's the point?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I've always said that I want to build up a management team that is diverse in terms of like some veterans that have been there a long time, some new
Sure.
people from outside, people from the competition. I want to get a diverse kind of focus
Yeah.
on my leadership team. I always look for that. What you're saying is that's okay, but what you need to make sure is that they have the safety, they feel they have the psychological
Okay.
safety to speak their mind, and that's a big part of it as well.
Sure, because if you only look at diversity in terms of who you hire, and you don't have this extra part of safety,
Yeah,
you're going to lose that diversity very quickly. If people don't feel safe, what are they going to do?
yeah,
Leave.
yeah, exactly. It's interesting because one of the companies I work for, we called it the good news company. And that's
Mm.
because anyone who brought up bad news, they were fired, or
Mm.
they were, their careers were stalled. So nobody brought up any bad news. So it was always the good news company. And so what ends up happening when you're in a situation like that is you only hear good news, and you never hear of those early warning signals that something might be going wrong. And so, I that's one of the things I really stress with my employees, like, give me the
Sure.
truth. Don't spin it.
Sure.
I want to know exactly
No,
what's going on, good, bad, and ugly, because I need that data.
exactly.
It's critical
Exactly.
for me as a leader to know exactly what's going on. Yeah.
This is also one of the things that I've heard several authors and people also say, and that's invite dissent. In other
Mm,
words, just ask people, please play the devil's advocate. I want to know what can go wrong. What possibly, we've got this brilliant idea. Please tell me what can go wrong here, or so not only what can go better here, but also what can actually go wrong here,
mm,
and have that vulnerability yourself as well. Display that vulnerability, that it's okay. That even if it's my beautiful idea, I'm happy if you come and tell me why it's a BS idea.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I think, I've worked for bosses like that, and I've tried to be that kind of a leader as well.
Mhm.
And I think that it's fun in those kind of
Yeah,
environments, because there is the
sure.
back and forth. There is the, hey, I think should do it this way for these reasons. And
Yeah,
I always found, like if you give people that psychological safety, the ability to speak up, the best ideas have always come not from me,
Definitely.
but from the people in
No.
the room. And sometimes I always say it's the quietest person usually has the best idea, but that's just, I found the introverts tend to have, they're thinking while other people are talking. And so I always try to find that introvert and try to
Yes.
give them an audience, because they usually have a crazy idea that no one's talking about, and it'll change the whole conversation. So I really think that's important. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. And also that introvert needs to feel that safety. So,
Yeah.
I'm a big believer of introversion. It's definitely isn't a disability.
No.
It has its, just like extroversion has its strength, so does introversion. And the nicest is that if you can use all the strengths that are available in your organization,
Yeah.
that's the most.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. That's great. Well, what final
Back to
message?
diversity.
What's that? Sorry.
That was back to diversity, actually, wasn't it?
It really is. Yeah, it really is. I think it's incredible when you have that, like you said, having a diverse group of people and the willingness to listen to them. I think that's really important. So because you get one without the other doesn't work. So
No,
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Well, what final message would you like to leave with our listeners right now?
well, I think the final message that I like to leave is always this idea of it actually isn't so much rocket science, getting how to see that the people you're leading are happy.
Hmm.
It's good for you. It's good for them. It's good for the organization. There's even research that shows that it's good for the bottom line of your organization. So to me, just that insight of realizing, this isn't something that's going to cost you money as an organization. It's the opposite. It's going to save you a lot of money and it's going to make you more profitable. And to me, it's not the one or the other. To me, it's the one and the other.
Hmm.
What do you want as an organization? Of course, you want to make sure that you're going to exist in 10 years' time. So yes, of course, you need to make sufficient money in order to make that a viable organization. And to me, it's not the one or the other, it's the one and the other.
Yeah, I love that, and I talk about that a lot. It's the people and the mission, and sometimes
Exactly.
some people focus just on people, and some people just focus on the
Sometimes,
mission. But it's the
no,
and
this both.
the and is really critical. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
I'm a big
excellent.
believer in that little language changes. And this is also something I've noticed. The effective leaders, they tend to use the word and a lot more often than the word but.
Yeah,
And it's exactly this. It's not the one or the other, it's the one and the other. The
yeah,
two
yeah.
coexist.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful, powerful message. Listeners, I hope you heard that. It doesn't seem like it's rocket science, but it again, it's common, it's common sense, but uncommonly applied in today in the work environment. So if you can do as Marcus suggests, you're gonna have a better workforce, you're gonna get more things done, and it's gonna add to your bottom line. And how do we know? Because the research shows it. And I can tell you, I have 30 years of practice that says it works. So it's good advice, solid advice, and it works. So I really appreciate that. Marcus, how can our listeners find out more about you, your books, and your services?
Well, the easiest way is just to visit my website. I have a website and I've called it excellent-leader.com. And that's the easiest way to get hold of me, to get hold of my books, to get hold of the training courses that I offer, of which the first one I offer is entirely free. Anybody's happy, anybody who wants to is welcome to just follow that course free of charge. So that would be the easiest way, and other ways are via LinkedIn. Yeah, I think those are the easiest ways. So the books are also available on Amazon.com. So I think they'll find me.
Well, we're going to put links in the show notes for Marcus's website, for LinkedIn, as well as the Amazon for his books. And again, listeners, guess what? Free course. Again, we like to give things free on the show. So follow the link down here and you're going to get a free course. And again, this will step up your ability to lead people. If you want to be a more excellent leader, this is a great starting point. So Markus, thank you very much for coming on the show. I've learned a lot from you, and you've confirmed some things, and you've opened my mind up on some other things. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your expertise today.
Thank you also for having me. It was a wonderful pleasure to chat with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is Jon Rennie saying take care and lead well.